Commander Vrel stood at the head of the briefing room, his three eyes blinking in sequence, a nervous habit he had developed over 20 cycles of military service. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, casting an ominous red glow across the faces of his squad. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were Korthak's Void Reapers, the finest, most decorated, most absurdly overconfident warriors in the entire galactic coalition. They had stormed black holes. They had wrestled plasma eels on Torvin Prime. They had survived dinner with the diplomatic corps, which, let us be honest, was arguably worse than actual combat. But today Vrel watched their mandibles twitch with something he had never seen before. Fear. All right, listen up, Vrel began, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for delivering catastrophically bad news. High Command has assigned us a retrieval mission. Sergeant Cleth, a four-armed veteran with more scars than sense, leaned forward. Retrieval? Commander, we are Void Reapers. We do not fetch things, we conquer things, we destroy things, we occasionally redecorate things with plasma fire. Yes, well, Vrel clicked his mandibles together. You are about to fetch something from Sector 7. The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of professional soldiers awaiting orders. No, this was the silence of creatures who had just realized their life insurance premiums were about to become very, very relevant. Sector 7? Lieutenant Rex whispered, her vocal sac deflating. You mean the zone? The actual, literal, universally acknowledged death trap that we use to scare children into eating their nutrient paste. That would be the one, yes. Vrel pulled up a three-dimensional map of the sector. It looked like someone had taken a perfectly good region of space and then asked a sadistic cartographer to mark every possible way to die horribly. Toxic atmosphere, check. Acid rain, double check. Predators with 16 different ways to dissolve your internal organs. Oh, you better believe that is a check. The zone had a reputation. 347 expeditions had gone in. 12 had come back, and those 12 survivors had immediately retired, changed their name, and opened quiet little shops selling yarn on peaceful outer rim worlds where the most dangerous thing was an overpriced latte. The equipment we need to retrieve, Vrel continued, ignoring the collective groan from his squad, is a Class 7 sensor array that crashed there 6 months ago. High Command wants it back. Apparently it contains data worth more than all our lives combined. How comforting, Cliff muttered. What is the projected survival rate for this mission? Vrel's middle eye twitched. The computers estimate somewhere between 4 and 7%, and the other 93%. Extremely dead. How extremely? The report used the phrase molecular dissociation 5 times. The squad exchanged glances. Molecular dissociation was not the fun kind of death. That was the kind of death where your descendants could not even collect your remains because your remains had become part of the local atmosphere. But wait, Frick said, her voice climbing an octave. There is more, is there not? You have that look, that I am about to make this exponentially worse look. Vrel nodded slowly. He pulled up another image on the display. It was a thermal scan of the zone, taken by a long-range probe. Right in the center, in the absolute worst, most lethally hostile part of that nightmarish landscape, was a heat signature, a structure, and movement. Someone, Vrel said carefully, is living there. The silence that followed could have suffocated a supernova. Living there, Cleth repeated, his voice flat. In the zone. The place where atmosphere eats through hull plating. The place where it rains acid. The place where the soil itself is classified as a war crime in 47 systems. Correct. Someone is living there voluntarily? All evidence suggests yes. Brix leaned back in her chair so hard it creaked. What kind of creature, what kind of absolute nightmare beast from the darkest corner of evolutionary mistakes could possibly survive in that environment? Vrel hesitated. He pulled up the final image. It was grainy, taken from maximum safe distance, but it was clear enough. A bipedal figure. 2 arms, 2 legs, relatively small, almost fragile looking. Preliminary scans suggest, Vrel said quietly, it is human. The room exploded with noise. Laughter, nervous clicking, and several very creative curse words in languages that had not been spoken in millennia. A human? Cleth was wheezing now. Those little pink things from that backwater spiral arm? Those creatures live on a paradise world. They have flowers and sunshine and liquid water that does not burn. What is one doing in the zone? Vrel closed all 3 of his eyes and sighed. That, he said, is exactly what we are going to find out. The transport shuttle rattled like a dying refrigerator as it descended through the upper atmosphere of Sector 7. Vrel gripped his command console, watching the hull integrity readings drop with each passing second. 14% degradation, 18, 22, and they had not even reached the ground yet. Remind me again, Claith said from his seat, checking his environmental suit for the 9th time in as many minutes. Why we volunteered for this? We did not volunteer, Vic corrected him, her own suit seals hissing as she double-checked every connection. The commander volunteered us. There is a significant difference. I feel it is important to clarify, Vrel interjected, not taking his eyes off the sensors, that I also did not volunteer. High Command told all of us, which is a beautiful military tradition, meaning we have no choice whatsoever. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, and the zone revealed itself in all its horrifying glory. It was, to put it mildly, aggressively hostile to life. The landscape stretched out below them like the fever dream of a particularly disturbed planetary geologist. The ground was not brown or gray like sensible planets. No, it was a mottled purple and green, which according to the sensors meant the soil had a pH level of 2.3. For context, that was more acidic than the stomach fluids of a terravore slug, and those things could digest starship hulls. Rain fell in sheets, except it was not water. The chemical analysis scrolling across Vrel's screen suggested it was a delightful cocktail of sulfuric compounds, dissolved metals, and something the computer had labeled as unknown corrosive agent. Approach with extreme caution and possibly a last will and testament. Lightning cracked across the sky, except it was green, not the fun green of bioluminescent algae, the green of ionized toxic gas igniting in the upper atmosphere. I have changed my mind, Cliff announced. I would like to be anywhere else. A black hole. A supernova. The annual budget meeting. Literally anywhere. Noted and denied. Vrel replied. Prepare for landing. The shuttle touched down on the least deadly-looking patch of ground they could find, which was like choosing the friendliest-looking shark in a feeding frenzy. The landing struts hissed and began dissolving immediately. Hull integrity at 61%, the ship computer announced in that calm, pleasant voice that computers used when delivering catastrophic news. Estimated time until critical failure, 17 minutes. 17 minutes? Vrix's voice climbed another octave. We are supposed to trek through this nightmare, find the sensor array, and get back in 17 minutes. No, Vrel said, standing and checking his personal shield generator. We have 17 minutes until the shuttle becomes a very expensive coffin. We are not coming back to it. The squad stared at him. We are walking out? Cliff asked slowly. High Command has authorized an extraction team to pick us up at the northern perimeter, approximately 8 kilometers from here. Oh, wonderful. A light stroll through hell. How refreshing. They descended the ramp, and within 3 steps, Vrel understood why the survival rate was so low. His boots, military-grade designed to withstand orbital bombardment, began smoking. The air itself felt wrong, pressing against his environmental suit. It was personally offended by his existence. Drax took readings with her handheld scanner. Atmospheric composition is 62%, toxic 31% corrosive, and 7%, what I can only describe as aggressively malicious. Temperature is fluctuating between 40 and 90 degrees. Radiation levels are, oh, let me see, enough to sterilize a small moon. And someone lives here, Cliff muttered, scanning the horizon. Voluntarily, they moved forward in formation, weapons drawn, though Rello suspected shooting the environment would be spectacularly unhelpful. Every few meters something new tried to kill them. Plants that spat acid when they got too close. Geysers that erupted without warning, spraying superheated toxic sludge. The ground itself occasionally opened up into sinkholes filled with what the scanner described as liquefied death. 2 kilometers in, they saw it. A structure, barely visible through the haze of toxic fog. Is that? Vex zoomed in with her optical enhancers. Is that a tent? It was indeed a tent. Not a fortified bunker. Not an armored habitat dome. A tent. The kind of flimsy recreational let-us-go-camping-and-enjoy-nature tent that civilized species used on planets where the wildlife did not actively practice chemical warfare. This cannot be real, Cleth whispered. This is a hallucination. The toxic air is making us see things. But it was real. And next to the tent was a chair. A folding chair. And what appeared to be a small fire pit with something cooking over it. That's smoke, Vrel said, his voice distant. Is that cooking smoke? According to my scanner, Vex replied, sounding like she was questioning her entire education. Yes, someone is grilling. Grilling. In the zone. Where the air is poison. Apparently, they found cover behind a large rock formation, Approximately 50 meters from the tent, the rock immediately began dissolving their gloves, but it was the best option available, which said everything about their current situation. "All right," Vrel said, trying to project confidence he absolutely did not feel. "We need a plan. Do we approach? Do we call out? Do we run screaming back the way we came and claim the mission was impossible?" Before anyone could answer, Cleth grabbed Vrel's arm. "Commander." Movement. A figure emerged from the tent. Human. Definitely human. Male. Possibly, though Vrel's xenobiology was rusty. Wearing pants. Just pants. No shirt. No environmental suit. No breathing apparatus. Just pants, and what appeared to be footwear humans called sandals. The human stretched, yawned, and walked over to the fire. He poked at whatever was cooking, nodded in satisfaction, and then, in a moment that would haunt Brill for the rest of his life, the human looked up at the acid rain falling from the sky, smiled, and tilted his head back to let it hit his face. "He is showering in acid rain," Vix said, her voice breaking. "He is treating acid rain like a pleasant afternoon drizzle." "I want to go home," Cleth announced. "Right now. Immediately. I have never wanted anything more in my entire life." A crack of lightning struck nearby, and the human glanced at it with the mild interest one might give to a slightly unusual bird. Then he went back to his cooking. "We need better intel," Vrel decided, pulling out the long-range observation equipment. "We watch. We learn. We figure out what we are dealing with before we make contact. And if what we are dealing with is an invincible death monster?" Cleth asked. Vrel adjusted the scanner and focused on the human, who was now humming what might have been a song. "Then we pray to every deity in the known galaxy," Vrel said quietly, "that it does not notice us." For the next 4 hours, Commander Vrel and his squad watched Marcus Webb go about his day, and with each passing minute their understanding of reality crumbled like a cookie in a hydraulic press. "He is making breakfast," Vrax reported, her voice hollow. "He just picked berries from that bush, the one our scanner flagged as toxic level 9 out of 10. Maybe he is going to process them somehow," Cleth suggested hopefully. "Boil them, filter out the toxins, render them safe through some advanced human technology we do not know about." Marcus popped 3 berries directly into his mouth and chewed with evident satisfaction. "Or he is just eating them raw," Cleth continued, his voice now devoid of all hope. "That works too, I suppose. Why would you need to be concerned about neurotoxins when you are a human?" Vrel adjusted the observation scanner, bringing the image into sharper focus. Marcus was now preparing what appeared to be a beverage. He took a canteen, walked over to a small stream running past his camp, and filled it with water that was, according to their sensor, somewhere between industrial runoff and liquefied nightmare. The water composition, Vrax read from her display, her mandibles trembling, includes sulfur compounds, heavy metals, trace amounts of radioactive isotopes, and something the computer has labeled as "do not touch ever." Marcus took a long drink, sighed contentedly, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "That is it," Cleth said, setting down his scanner. "I am having a breakdown. Right here, right now. My entire military career, my understanding of biology, physics, and common sense all gone. Deleted. I am rebooting my brain." "Stay focused," Vrel commanded, though his own voice lacked conviction. "We need to understand what we are dealing with." What they were dealing with, as it turned out, was somehow worse than they imagined. Around mid-morning by Vrel's chronometer, Marcus decided to go for a walk. Not a cautious, strategic patrol, a casual stroll. He wandered through vegetation that was flagged as Class 4 hazardous, humming that strange tune. Plants that had been actively trying to kill Vrel's squad earlier seemed to lean away from Marcus as if they understood the food chain and knew where they ranked. Then the predator showed up. It crawled out from behind a rock formation, 6 legs, mandibles dripping with venom, a segmented body covered in natural armor plating. The scanner identified it as a razorback stalker, an apex predator with a documented kill rate of 100%. These things hunted in the zone because everything else was not deadly enough. "He is dead," Vrix whispered. "There is no way to survive that encounter without heavy weapons." Marcus turned, saw the stalker, and his face did something that Vrel's translator implant struggled to interpret. A smile. Humans smiled at apex predators. "Hey there, buddy," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the toxic landscape. "Come here, boy." The stalker approached, and Vrel's hand moved to his sidearm instinctively. But the creature did not attack. It lowered its head and made a sound that could only be described as a purr. A purr. An apex predator was purring. Marcus scratched behind what might have been the thing's auditory sensors. "Good boy. Yes. You are. Who is a terrifying instrument of death. You are. Yes, you are. I have lost my mind, Clith announced. This is not real. I am in a medical bay somewhere, hallucinating from toxic exposure. The stalker rolled over, all 6 legs in the air, while Marcus rubbed its armored belly. He has domesticated a razorback stalker, Vrel said, his voice distant. He has turned an unstoppable killing machine into a pet. How? Why? What evolutionary path leads to this? But Marcus was not done destroying their sanity. After his walk, with his new 6-legged friend trailing behind him like a puppy, Marcus returned to camp and noticed something that made him light up with what appeared to be joy. The toxic rain had formed a small pool near his tent, a bubbling, steaming collection of liquid that was reading off their sensors like a war crime. Marcus looked at this pool of acid and corrosive chemicals, turned to his stalker companion and said, "You know what? It has been a hot morning. I am going for a swim." "No," Vrex said simply. No. He is not. He wouldn't." Marcus removed his sandals and waded into the pool. "He is," Glaith whispered, his voice breaking. "He actually is." Marcus submerged himself completely, surfaced, and let out a whoop of what could only be interpreted as pleasure. "Now that is refreshing," he called out to no one in particular, or perhaps to the universe itself, which Rel suspected was too terrified to respond. The stalker sat at the pool's edge, making that purring sound again, occasionally dipping a leg in the acid water and pulling it back out. "Even the apex predator will not go in," Vrel observed. "The creature that fears nothing in this zone will not enter that pool. But the human? The human is doing laps." For lunch, Marcus prepared what he called tea. Vrel watched through the scanner as the human picked leaves from a plant that was classified as extremely lethal. "Do not approach." Marcus crushed them, added them to his canteen of radioactive stream water, and let it steep in the heat of the toxic air. Then he drank it. "It probably tastes terrible," Claith said desperately, grasping for any shred of normalcy. "He is suffering but hiding it. That must be it." Marcus smacked his lips and poured himself a second cup. "Okay," Vax said, setting down all her equipment. "I have a theory. Humans are not a species. They are a cosmic joke. The universe made them as a test to see what happens when you remove the survival instinct and replace it with audacity." "That is not a theory," Kleth replied. "That is the only logical explanation." Rel stood up, determination settling over him like a shroud. "I am making contact." Both his subordinates grabbed his arms. "Commander." "No," the pricks pleaded. "We do not know what he is capable of. We do not know what humans can do. What if he is hostile? What if he is friendly?" Kleth added, somehow making that sound worse. "What if he invites us for tea? That tea he made from poison leaves and radioactive water? I cannot drink that, Commander. I will die." "We came here for answers," Rel said firmly, "and the only way to get answers is to talk to him." Or Kleth suggested, "We could observe for another few days, gather data, maybe send a strongly worded questionnaire via probe." But Vrel was already checking his environmental suit seals. "You two stay here. Maintain comms. If I die, tell High Command that humans are not to be trifled with." "When you die," Vex corrected sadly. "Fine. When I die, record everything. This information needs to reach the Coalition." Vrel took a deep breath of filtered air, offered a silent prayer to his ancestors, and stepped out from behind the rock formation. Marcus Webb, the human who lived in hell for fun, looked up from his toxic tea and waved cheerfully. "Well, hey there," Marcus called out, his voice full of warmth and welcome. "Visitors, come on over. I just made tea." Vrel's legs stopped working for a moment. Behind him, through the comm link, he heard Kleth whisper. He offered tea. "The commander is definitely going to die." Vrel's legs moved on autopilot, carrying him across the toxic landscape toward Marcus Webb's camp, while his brain screamed at him to run in the opposite direction. Each step felt like a negotiation with death. The razorback stalker watched him approach, its compound eyes tracking his movement, but it did not attack. Instead, it yawned, revealing rows of venom-dripping fangs, and went back to napping. Marcus stood up from his folding chair, and Vrel got his first clear look at the human without the scanner interface. He was tall by human standards, Vrel supposed, with brown skin that showed no signs of chemical burns despite the acidic environment. His hair was dark and curly, his face covered in what humans called a beard. He wore those pants, those ridiculous sandals, and a smile that suggested he had not received the memo about this being a death work. "Well, this is a surprise," Marcus said, his tone as casual as if Vrel had just wandered into a coffee shop instead of a zone where everything was actively trying to commit murder. "I have been here for 3 weeks and you are my first visitor. How about that?" Vrel's translator implant worked overtime to process the human's language. You have been here for 3 weeks. Give or take. Yeah. Marcus gestured to his camp. Kind of lose track of time out here, you know. No clocks. No schedule. Just me and nature. Nature. Vrel repeated, looking around at the landscape that was less nature and more a concentrated effort by the universe to eliminate life. You call this nature? Sure. Marcus shrugged. I mean, it is a bit rough, but that is kind of the point. Here, sit down. You want some tea? I just brewed a fresh batch. Every instinct Vrel had developed over 20 cycles of military service told him to refuse. Unfortunately, his training also included diplomatic protocols, and refusing hospitality could be interpreted as hostile. He was trapped between death by poisoning and death by cultural insensitivity. That is very kind, Vrel managed, lowering himself carefully onto a rock that seemed slightly less corrosive than the others. I am Commander Vrel of the Korthax Void Reapers. We are on a mission in this sector. Korthax, huh? That is cool. Marcus poured a cup of his toxic tea and offered it to Vrel. I am Marcus Webb, software engineer from Earth. Currently on vacation. The cup sat in Vrel's hand like a live grenade. Through his helmet display, he could see Rakes and Cliff frantically running scans on the liquid. Their responses came through his internal comm. Do not drink that, Vrax hissed. Commander, the toxicity levels would kill you in approximately 45 seconds. If you drink that, Clef added, we are not putting that in the official report. I refuse to document death by politeness. Vrel held the cup and tried to smile. Though he suspected his facial structure made it look more like a threat display. Vacation? You are on vacation here? Yeah man, Marcus settled back into his chair, sipping his own tea with evident enjoyment. Needed to get away from the grind, you know? Work was stressing me out. 40-hour weeks, back-to-back meetings, constant emails. I was burning out hard. So you came here, Vrel said slowly. To Sector 7. The zone. What we classify as a Class 12 death world. Is that what you guys call it? Marcus laughed, a sound that was somehow both pleasant and deeply unsettling. That is pretty dramatic. I mean, sure, it has got some quirks, but it is quiet. Peaceful. Nobody bothering me about quarterly reports or asking me if I got their memo. Quirks. Vrel's voice came out flat. The acid rain is a quirk. Oh, that. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. You get used to it. Actually kind of nice once you adjust. Like a free exfoliation treatment. My skin has never been clearer. Through the comb, Vrel heard what sounded like Clef banging his head against a rock. And the toxic atmosphere. Vrel pressed. Builds up your immune system, Marcus replied cheerfully. You should see Earth though. Now that is a rough planet. Every sensor on Vrel's suit froze. I am sorry, what? Earth, Marcus repeated, taking another sip of tea. My home planet. Way more intense than this place. This is actually pretty mild compared to some spots back home. This is mild, Vrel said, his voice climbing. This zone, where the ground dissolves, military-grade boots, where the air is classified as a chemical weapon, where apex predators hunt other apex predators for sport. This is mild compared to Earth. Well, yeah, Marcus seemed genuinely confused by the question. I mean, we have got places on Earth that make this look like a resort. Australia, for instance. Ever heard of it? No. Continent full of things that want to kill you. Spiders the size of dinner plates. Snakes with enough venom to drop an elephant. Jellyfish that cause psychological torture before death. Birds that literally kick you to death. And that is just the wildlife. Do not even get me started on the weather. Cyclones, bushfires, floods, droughts, sometimes all in the same week. Vrel's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. A reboot of his comprehension systems. And humans live there? Oh, tons of humans. Great place, actually. Lovely beaches. Lovely beaches, Vrel whispered. On a continent of death. Then you have got Death Valley in North America. Marcus continued, warming to his topic. Hottest place on Earth. Temperatures that cook your brain. Or Siberia, coldest place, where the air itself can freeze your lungs. Or the Amazon, where every plant, insect and animal has evolved specifically to be as lethal as possible. Or underwater. We have got ocean trenches so deep and hostile that we know more about outer space than we do about them. And you vacation here, Vrel said, gesturing at the toxic wasteland around them, because it is relaxing. Exactly, Marcus beamed. See, you get it. No traffic, no crowds, no tourists taking selfies everywhere. Just me, the occasional predator that wants belly rubs. And peace and quiet. Plus, the rain here is nothing compared to acid rain back home. Industrial pollution, you know? We kinda did that to ourselves. Through the comm, Vikax's voice came through, shaking. Commander, is he saying that humans voluntarily poisoned their own planet and then just continued living there? It sounds like that is what he is saying, yes. Vrel replied quietly. I am updating my entire threat assessment of humanity, Clet announced. Right now. In real time. Uploading to command. Marking Earth as do not engage under any circumstances. Marcus leaned forward, his expression friendly and open. So what brings you guys out here anyway? You said you were on a mission? We are retrieving equipment, Vrel explained, still processing the tsunami of horrifying information. A sensor array that crashed in this sector. Our command considers it valuable enough to risk our lives. Oh yeah, I saw that, Marcus said brightly. Big piece of tech, right? About 200 meters that way. He pointed casually in a direction that Rel's scanner confirmed was correct. I moved it closer to my camp, actually. Thought about taking it apart to see how it worked, but I figured it probably belonged to someone. You moved it, Vrel said faintly. Our sensor array. That weighs approximately 8 tons. Good workout, Marcus patted his stomach. Gotta stay in shape on vacation, you know? Otherwise you get soft. He moved 8 tons of equipment. Clay's voice came through, now just a series of broken syllables. For exercise. Because he might get soft. Hey, you guys want to stay for dinner? Marcus asked, standing up and stretching. I caught this local creature earlier. Kinda looks like a cross between your stalker over there and a lobster. Figured I would grill it up. Should have plenty for everyone. Earl stood quickly, his survival instincts finally overriding his diplomatic training. That is incredibly generous. But we need to retrieve our equipment and report back to command. Immediately. Right now. As fast as physically possible. Sure. Marcus walked over to a tarp and pulled it off, revealing the pristine sensor array. Here you go. Hope it still works. I tried to be careful with it. The equipment was undamaged. Perfectly intact. This human had casually relocated 8 tons of sensitive military technology through a death world, and had not even scratched it. Thank you, Vrel said, signaling his team to approach. You have been extremely helpful. No problem. Marcus smiled. That terrifying friendly smile again. Hey, if you guys ever want a vacation here, let me know. I am thinking about setting up a second camp deeper in the zone. Found this crater that is even more intense. Should be fun. Fun, Vrella repeated numbly. Yes, fun. We will certainly keep that in mind. As his squad emerged from cover and began securing the sensor array, Marcus waved goodbye like they were old friends parting after a pleasant afternoon. Take care, Marcus called out. Safe travels. And seriously, try Earth sometime. Beautiful planet. Might kill you, but that is part of the charm. The extraction shuttle arrived exactly on schedule, and Vrel's squad loaded the sensor array with the kind of desperate efficiency that came from wanting to leave a place very, very badly. Not one of them spoke during the entire flight back to the command ship. They simply sat in silence, staring at nothing, processing what they had witnessed. Cleth was rocking slightly in his seat. Brex had her face in her hands. Vrel just stared out the viewport at the stars, wondering if anything in the universe made sense anymore. 12 hours later, Vrel stood in the briefing room of the Coalition command ship Relentless, facing a semicircle of high command officers representing 17 different species. Admiral Thornick, a Quellan with enough metals to sink a small spacecraft, leaned forward with his 6 arms folded. Commander Rel, Thornick began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Your report states that a human is living in Sector 7 voluntarily. For recreation. That is correct, sir. And this human has been there for 3 weeks with no protective equipment beyond, and I am reading this correctly. Pants and sandals? Correct, sir. And he drinks the local water, which our analysis confirms would kill most known species within minutes. He does, sir. He also makes tea with it. A murmur rippled through the assembled officers. General Tresh, a Vothian war hero with combat experience spanning 4 decades, spoke up. Commander, are you suggesting that humans are immune to toxins? Not immune, sir. Vrel chose his words carefully. More like, aggressively indifferent. The human, Marcus Webb, acknowledged that the environment was harsh. He described it as having quirks. He then compared it favorably to his home planet. Favorably? Admiral Thornick's eye stalks extended in disbelief. He compared a Class 12 death world favorably to Earth. Yes, sir, he indicated that Earth contains multiple regions more hostile than the zone. He specifically mentioned a place called Australia, which he described as, and I quote, a continent full of things that want to kill you, end quote. He then said, it has lovely beaches. The silence in the room was profound. "Let me understand this clearly," General Kresh said slowly. "Humans evolved on a death world, survived, and then built civilizations there." "It appears so, sir." Furthermore, Mr. Webb indicated that humans have poisoned parts of their own planet through industrial activity and simply continued living there. "They poisoned themselves?" Another officer, a Drellian ambassador, stood up and did not evacuate. "No, sir. According to Mr. Webb, they just adapted." Admiral Thornick pulled up a star chart, locating Earth's position in a distant spiral arm. "Intelligence. What do we know about human military capabilities?" An intelligence officer, a nervous plenary named Sketch, consulted his data pad. "Until this report, sir, we classified them as minimal threat, pre-warp civilization, fragmented governments, still using chemical propulsion. But, if Commander Vrel's report is accurate, we may need to reassess everything." "Reassess is putting it mildly," Cleth spoke up from behind Vrel, his voice still carrying the trauma of the mission. "Sirs, with respect, I watched this human pet an apex predator. I watched him swim in acid runoff. I watched him drink radioactive water and smile, and he said he was on vacation because work was too stressful." "Too stressful," Thornick repeated. "His work on a death world was too stressful, so he vacationed on a worse death world to relax." "Yes, sir." The Admiral turned to his staff. "Get me every piece of intelligence we have on Earth. Population, distribution, technological development, everything. I want to know what kind of species we are dealing with." "Sir," the intelligence officer replied, tapping frantically at his console. "Earth's population is approximately 8 billion humans. They occupy every continent on the planet, including the hostile regions Commander Vrel mentioned. They live at the equator, where temperatures exceed 50 degrees. They live at the poles, where temperatures drop to -60. They live on tectonic fault lines near active volcanoes, in flood zones, and in areas with regular catastrophic weather events. 8 billion, Kresh whispered. 8 billion of these creatures. Furthermore," the intelligence officer continued, his voice rising with each discovery, "they engage in recreational activities that include jumping out of aircraft for fun, climbing mountains that kill regularly, diving to depths that would crush our submarines, and something called extreme sports, which appears to be deliberately dangerous activities they do for entertainment." Admiral Thornick closed all 6 of his eyes. "Recommended threat assessment?" "Sir," the intelligence officer said carefully, "I recommend we classify humans as galaxy-level threat, category unknown, not because they are hostile, but because they do not seem to understand what hostility means. They treat death worlds like vacation destinations. If they ever develop faster than light travel and decide to expand, there is nowhere in the known galaxy inhospitable enough to stop them. They would colonize anywhere," Kresh realized, horror creeping into his voice. "Black hole-adjacent systems, radiation-saturated nebulas, rogue planets in deep space, places we cannot even send probes. They would build homes." "Motion to mark Earth as do not engage," Admiral Thornick announced. "All in favor?" Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage in the room went up. Carried unanimously. Thornick made the notation official. "Earth and all its territories are hereby marked as restricted contact. No military operations, no colonization attempts, no interference of any kind. We do not provoke the humans. We do not challenge the humans. We smile politely if we meet them and then we leave quickly." "What about Mr. Webb?" Vrix asked. "He is still in the zone." "We leave him there," Thornick decided. "If he wants to vacation in hell, that is his choice. Maybe he will get bored and leave." Vrel thought about Marcus's parting words, about setting up a second camp in a worse location, and said nothing. The briefing ended. Officers filed out, already drafting new protocols and updating threat databases. Vrel stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars, thinking about a species that looked at the most hostile environments in the galaxy and saw opportunities for fun. Somewhere below, in the toxic wasteland of Sector 7, Marcus Webb was probably grilling poison lobster and planning his next adventure, and that, Vrel reflected, was perhaps the most terrifying thought of all. Humans did not conquer death worlds through superior technology or military might. They conquered them through sheer, incomprehensible audacity. They looked at places designed to kill them and said, "Sounds nice, let us make it a vacation spot." The galaxy was not ready for humanity. Vrel suspected the galaxy would never be ready for humanity. 3 days later, long-range scans detected a new structure in Sector 7. Deeper in the zone, in a crater where the toxicity levels made the original site look like a spa, Marcus Webb had found his second camp, He had also put up a sign visible from orbit. It read, Camp Webb, now with more danger, vacancy available. Varel deleted the scan data. Some things, he decided, High Command did not need to know.